Some mornings begin like any other. You pour your coffee, glance at the clock and move through the motions of the day. But something feels off. Not because something is wrong, but because something is missing. That subtle emptiness doesn't scream, it whispers. And in that whisper is a question: are you really giving your best? You might recall a time long ago when effort was instinct, when even tying your shoes felt like an accomplishment. Back then, you didn't need rewards or recognition to push forward. You just did your best because it felt right. But somewhere along the way, the urgency of life replaced that silent standard of excellence with something easier, something safer. And so you move faster but feel less. You finish more but care less. The world tells you to be efficient, quick, productive, but it never says to be excellent. And yet deep within, something in your soul still longs to give everything, not for applause, but for peace. That feeling returns on an ordinary afternoon. You're doing something simple, cleaning the house, writing a note, preparing a meal, and suddenly a wave of emotion rises. You slow down, you focus, you care, and for the first time in a long time, you feel alive. Why? Because you gave more than what was expected. You gave your best. There's no celebration, no audience. But the reward is unmistakable. It's quiet satisfaction. It's a soul that breathes lighter. It's the joy of doing something well. Not because you had to, but because you could. That moment doesn't last forever. Life pulls you back. You scroll, you react, you go numb again. But now you've seen it, that glimpse of who you really are when you give your full effort, and it won't let go, not easily. You begin to notice how often you hold back, how many times you do the minimum, how often you call something good enough when deep down you know it isn't. Excellence starts to haunt you, not as pressure, but as a promise. You remember a phrase someone once told you, long forgotten: whatever you do it with all your heart. It strikes you differently now. It isn't about performance, it's about integrity, about honoring the moment, about becoming whole again. You wonder what your life would look like if you lived that way every day. What if each task was sacred? What if your energy was no longer wasted on impressing others, but on living with honor? What would change? The truth is, everything would. Because excellence doesn't just affect results, it transforms the person who chooses it, slowly, quietly, completely. But tell me, what about you? Has something in this story stirred something inside you? Let me know what you think so far. You start to test this new path in small ways. You listen more closely during conversations. You take extra time on a task no one will ever see. You clean the corner of the room that's always ignored. And something unexpected happens. You begin to feel proud again, not of what you did, but of how you did it. That pride isn't loud, it doesn't need to be. It's the kind that lets you sleep better at night, the kind that looks back at the day and says, I showed up. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but fully. And that, in itself, is rare. Then one day, you're faced with a moment of frustration. You're tired, behind schedule. You want to cut corners, and no one would blame you. No one would even notice, but you would. And that thought alone stops you. Because now, excellence isn't a rule. It's part of who you are. It surprises you how much effort changes your perception of time. When you give your best, time doesn't feel wasted, even if the outcome isn't impressive. Because doing something with all you have is never a waste. It's an offering, a way to give your day meaning. Not everyone understands. Some may think you're overthinking things, that you care too much about little details, but you start to see what they can't. That small things done with great care build something unshakable inside you. Character, dignity, clarity. There comes a moment when you look back at the person you used to be, and you realize how often you lived half-heartedly, rushed, distracted, distant. You forgive that version of yourself, but you also promise never to go back. Your actions begin to influence others, not because you told them what to do, but because they saw you doing it. Quiet excellence has a ripple effect. It raises the standard in the room, even if no one says a word. Eventually, the challenge grows. Life tests your consistency. You face disappointment. You give your best, and still fail. But instead of breaking you, it grounds you, because now you understand. The joy isn't in the result. It's in the offering. Failure loses its sting when your heart was fully in it. That's the secret. You begin to walk with more confidence. Not because you always succeed, but because you no longer fear giving your all. By now, excellence feels natural, not effortless but honest. You no longer measure your worth by outcomes. You measure it by integrity. You feel lighter, more whole, and for the first time in years, you recognize yourself again. Thank you for staying with me this far. It means more than you know, and I can promise you, the best part of this journey is still ahead. You begin to see your work, no matter how ordinary, as sacred. A conversation becomes an opportunity to heal. A meal becomes an act of love. A routine task becomes a place to leave your fingerprint of care. Suddenly, nothing feels meaningless. Even in silence, there's purpose. Even in repetition, there's depth. The rhythm of your life begins to slow, but not in laziness, in intention. You're no longer chasing time. You're aligning with it, meeting each moment as if it matters, because it does. One afternoon, a stranger crosses your path. The interaction is brief, a moment of kindness, a word spoken with presence. But days later, they reach out to say it changed them. You realize your quiet commitment isn't invisible, it's leaving traces. But just when things seem aligned, life shifts. A storm hits, a personal crisis, unexpected news, a loss, and you're shaken. Not because you're unprepared, but because life always finds new ways to test what's real. The question returns, will you still give your best, even now? You wrestle with it, because this time excellence hurts. It demands more than effort. It demands surrender. You want to run, but something deep within won't let you, so you stay. You breathe, you give again, and what comes back is peace. Not because things got better, but because you stayed true. That choice becomes a turning point. You no longer see effort as a burden, but as a freedom. The freedom to live without regret, to look in the mirror and say, I showed up with everything I had. That kind of living changes you. You start seeing beauty in others who live that way too. The parent who sacrifices without complaint, the worker who takes pride in the unnoticed details, the elder who listens without distraction. They become your silent teachers. Proof that giving your best is a way of honoring life itself. One evening, a memory surfaces, a moment from years ago when you didn't give your best. It stings, shame whispers in. But now, instead of avoiding it, you face it, and you learn. Excellence doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. Forgiveness becomes easier. You no longer expect perfection from yourself or anyone else. You only ask for presence, for effort, for truth. That becomes your new definition of success. And slowly, the joy returns, not as a loud celebration, but as a steady light. You carry it quietly, and wherever you go, people feel it, even if they don't understand it. Because joy earned through integrity doesn't need explanation. It simply is. You begin to understand that joy has a texture. It's not always bright or loud. Sometimes it feels like sitting still after a long day, knowing you gave it your all. It feels like peace settling into your bones, knowing you didn't hold back. That joy grows stronger when it's shared. You start to notice others looking to you, not for answers, but for example. And without trying to lead, you do. Not with your words, but with your choices. Quietly, consistently. An opportunity arises, one that tests not just your skills, but your values. You could take the shortcut, you could impress others, but your heart knows. To stay true to yourself, you must do it the harder way, the honest way, the excellent way. You choose integrity, and you lose something, maybe time, maybe approval, maybe the spotlight. But what you gain is far greater, a soul at rest and a conscience clean. You walk away taller, not because you won, but because you didn't sell yourself short. Days pass, then weeks, and this new way of living becomes less about effort and more about identity. Excellence stops feeling like something you chase. It becomes something you carry, something that lives in how you show up, for others and for yourself. You start recognizing that the smallest acts often require the deepest strength. It's easier to impress strangers than to be kind at home. Easier to give advice than to forgive, but you lean in anyway. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. That quiet courage starts shaping everything. Your relationships deepen, your words soften. You stop needing to prove anything. And without realizing it, you begin to live with a rare kind of authority, one that comes not from position, but from presence. A challenge comes from someone close to you. It's unexpected and emotional. You're misunderstood, your motives questioned. The old you would have reacted, but now you respond with grace, with patience, with clarity. That moment shows you how far you've come. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You only need to be real. And real means showing up fully, in pain, in doubt, in love, giving the best you can no matter what's left. That becomes your quiet legacy. And one morning, you wake up and feel it in your chest. A calm knowing. You're not chasing joy anymore. You're living it, one honest moment at a time. You begin to reflect on how far you've come, not by measuring achievements, but by recognizing how different your inner world feels. The restlessness has faded. The guilt of half effort no longer shadows your days. In its place is quiet strength. You notice how your presence affects others, not because you try to be noticed, but because your consistency creates safety. People lean in when you speak, not because you're louder, but because your words are grounded in something deeper. The temptation to return to your old ways still visits, to rush, to fake it, to check out. But now you see it coming. You pause, you breathe, and you choose again to stay rooted, to remain whole. Even the mundane feels meaningful. Folding laundry, driving in silence, waiting in line. Each moment becomes a chance to show up fully. You realize that life isn't about grand events. It's about thousands of small decisions to do what's right with care. One day you fail again, not dramatically, just a missed opportunity to be present. You feel it right away, that inner pull, and instead of shame, there's recognition. You simply start again. That's the difference now. You no longer quit, you return. That habit of returning becomes your strength. You stop fearing failure. You trust the process. You know that giving your best is not a performance, it's a practice, one that you now walk with day by day. You begin to see your past differently, not as a collection of regrets, but as raw material for growth. The missed chances, the wasted years, all of it shaped your hunger to live with purpose now. And that purpose gives the pain meaning. Conversations begin to go deeper. You find yourself listening more than speaking, asking instead of advising. And in those moments, something shifts. You become a mirror for others, showing them without words what it looks like to live with heart. Your relationships start to reflect your inner life. The right people draw closer. Those who feed on drama or distraction begin to drift. Not because you push them away, but because the light you carry now asks more from everyone around you. And one evening, under a quiet sky, you look up and whisper a prayer, not asking for more, but giving thanks. Because now you understand, the joy of life was never in what you got. It was always in how you gave. You start to carry yourself differently, not with pride, but with peace. There's nothing left to prove, only more to give. And what you give now isn't effort alone. It's presence, patience, and a deeper kind of love. The people closest to you begin to feel it. They don't always have the words, but they sense it. That something about you is steady, safe, strong, not perfect, just real. And that realness is a rare kind of gift. An opportunity comes that would have excited the old you. Status, recognition, applause. But now you pause. You ask a different question. Not what will I gain, but who will I become if I say yes? The answer guides you to something quieter, but richer. You begin to value stillness, not as an escape, but as preparation. You know now that true excellence doesn't come from constant motion, but from deliberate action. Less noise, more clarity, less rush, more truth. Even your rest has changed. It's no longer a reward for exhaustion, but a sacred rhythm, a way to honor the body, the soul, the silence. Rest is no longer something you earn, it's something you protect. A crisis comes, not outside but within. Old fears return. The voice that says, "You're not enough, you've wasted time, you'll never finish strong." But you've heard that voice before, and this time you don't believe it. You speak back with grace. You remember the beginning of this journey, the confusion, the exhaustion, the hollow victories. And now you see how different everything feels. Not because life got easier, but because you chose to show up differently, to give fully. Someone younger comes to you, searching, uncertain. You don't give them answers, you give them presence. And in your eyes, they find permission to slow down, to try, to care deeply. The cycle continues. Quiet excellence multiplies. You start to think about legacy, not in terms of what you'll leave behind, but in how you live now. You know that your daily choices are seeds. You won't see all of them bloom. But that's not why you plant them. You plant them because it's who you've become. And when the final chapter of your story begins to close, you won't be remembered for perfection. You'll be remembered for presence, for doing small things with great care, for living each day, not to impress the world, but to honor the gift of life itself.